Barry!
Jill!
Barry!
Jill! What's going on? Any clues?
No, but something's wrong with this house.
Well, we're finally here. Finally at the first game to use the term survival horror. It took surviving Lovecraftian rituals, cleansing angry spirits, navigating haunted houses, and watching a franchise lose its original identity, something that would weirdly repeat for the genre as a whole. But now we're here. It's 1998, and our brave boys and girls of S.T.A.R.S are moving out in search of Bravo Team. I know many YouTubers who review this game open up with how this was one of their original games from childhood. Wish I could be original here, but I'm very much the same. I remember arguing that since the game was rated for animated blood and not realistic blood, I was old enough to play it. Something rather ironic considering the iconic opening. Also, kind of funny that Devil May Cry was in my house, and it was years before I knew how deeply connected the franchises were. So as you've seen if you've been following these reviews, there was a rise in 3D thanks to games like Alone in the Dark. The release of the PS1 would aid in this push, as it was a nice little powerhouse for getting out, at the time, impressive 3D effects. Now the story of Resident Evil 1's production is pretty well known by this point. Still, I'll go over it just in case someone needs it. Yes, I'm a Jill main. How could you tell? Sweet Home was released in 1989, but come the early 1990s and with advancement in technology, a remake was being tossed around, namely by Sweet Home creator Tokuro Fujiwara. You might remember him expressing frustration with the limitations of the time. Now he believed the full game could be realized. He would entrust this to Shinji Mikami, because he's a bit of a scaredy cat. But licensing issues would arise, and a new game would have to be made. Starting production in 1993, the game was originally planned for the Super NES before moving to the PS1 in 1994. Going from a hellish location to something more realistic, it would take inspiration from the Overlook Hotel and George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Jumping from Japanese supernatural to zombies in America, it even started out as first person before adopting the cameras from Alone in the Dark, largely due to how much more detail could be utilized with pre-rendered backgrounds. Honestly, I think he just didn't want the frame rate of Dr. Hauser. In something that would become a hilarious staple of the series, the first game had many alterations. There was co-op, there were cyborgs, there was real-time weapon switching, and much more. Really, the production of Resident Evil 1 is something a person could make an entire documentary on, maybe even with multiple parts. But I won't go too far in the weeds, yet. Let's all just repeat the famous fun fact. Resident Evil 1 was originally released as Biohazard. This would be up until its North American localization, where a DOS game had already taken the title, as well as an alternative metal band. But eventually it would be released under the title of Resident Evil. And holy shit is there a ton of variants. I did sit down and play those that I could get my hands on. I'll touch on some of the differences later, but suffice to say I decided to sit down and play through Resident Evil Director's Cut. Not the DualShock edition. I'm sorry, I know the basement theme is mandatory. I spent an entire night in a clock tower asking for forgiveness while it played. Made the scissor fellow rather angry. So what's the setup for our team of officers? The year is 1996. Strange occurrences have been happening around the town of Raccoon City. People going missing, random acts of violence, and strangest of all is that the victims appear mauled, their bodies torn as if some sort of animal was doing this. Out in the Arklay Mountains, S.T.A.R.S Bravo team has gone missing. It's now that our squad sets out to search and rescue. S.T.A.R.S standing for Special Tactics and Rescue Squad. Think like a SWAT team. Finding Bravo Team's chopper, they disembark their own and search the area. Finding a body part, they are soon attacked by dogs and forced to retreat to the only perceived place of safety. A mansion. Oh, and Brad fucked off. Maybe the novel explains this, I don't remember, and I didn't have time to reread it. Now, without spoiling much, a decent chunk of your playthrough will be spent navigating this mansion. You'll be dealing with threats both of the undead variety as well as traps. Most are surprisingly noticeable if you take your time, but more than a few are capable of catching you off guard. Luckily, most of them you can back out and aren't instant death like they were for Carnby and Emily. The choice of playable characters returned for gamers. However, whereas there was little to no difference between our prior duo, these officers have a few quirks. Choosing Jill at the start of the game, we'll see the player being given some lockpicks from good old Barry. These basically cut out a major item in the mansion, as well as some optional ones found in Chris's campaign. Meanwhile, Chris finds himself with more health and supposedly a higher crit chance, as well as being a faster runner. I honestly can't say if that's true. Of course, I played this game enough to know how to one-shot the undead with a shotgun rather reliably. The biggest difference that tells me who is easier comes down to their companions as well as their inventory space. I'll touch on the companions later, but essentially Jill has 2 extra slots compared to Chris, something that can screw over newer players. There is plenty of backtracking through the mansion, especially on a first playthrough, but it never felt very annoying or wasteful. Enemies you clear out stay dead, and the mansion has a nice roundabout feel to it. While Desetto is largely an inclined straight line between the floors with offshoot rooms, the mansion is a bit more intricate. Hallways connected by small rooms and their trap doors, windows from one to see into another, and multiple points to swap floors. It sounds more complicated than it really is, as the mansion most easily cuts up into a west and east wing, with the central location you start in. While exploring, you will be faced with various enemies. I have to say that going back to this title after all these years, the zombies are complemented by the layout of the zones. You can still bait them, but it's much harder than later entries, where environments would be more open. Also, not having a quick turn threw me off in the beginning.
I can make this work.
That said, you can largely evade, but when it comes time to fight, you end up using a decent chunk of resources. It can take half a magazine to down some of the undead with your starting pistol. If you aren't careful, you might find yourself lacking more powerful rounds for bosses. I had a person ask me a long time ago, how do you aim in these games? Essentially, the game has a sort of soft lock. You hold down one button to assume a firing stance, and the game will lock onto whichever enemy it thinks you are most likely aiming for. That said, you can adjust or aim up and down should the situation require that. This can make fighting the birds rather difficult due to their speed. At least the dogs have a sizable hitbox. Most of these versions do have the aim assist, save for the initial North American release, done at the request of American staff who wanted to play the repeat rental game. I'll admit that having grown up on the DualShock edition, which I believe has the higher difficulty, my opinion here may be skewed. There is definitely some challenge to the game, but once you get a decent understanding of where to go or know when to fight and when to flee, the game becomes a lot easier. Not saying it'll be a breeze, though it's definitely harder than Sweet Home. Honestly, the only thing that I remember running remotely low on was my ammunition. Health items were rather abundant. That said, so long as you reach the end with just a few magnum rounds or magazines, you can still easily win. And the knife is always there.
In close-range combat, a knife can sometimes be more useful than a gun.
While Alone in the Dark, combat was something you had to do, or you'd solve a puzzle to avoid it, here it's simply run or fight. Not much in between save for later when fighting enemies you can knock down at the expense of one shotgun shell. Also limited are saves. You have ink ribbons, which typically would be 3, but in that good old western normal equals hard fashion, a pickup only gives you 2. Item management can also prove troublesome. I mean, just packing a gun, ammo, and a heal item is half the inventory for Chris. Luckily, all but 2 typewriters, which he used to save, are located next to item boxes, which are infinite and share their items. Finally, a side note about the movement in the game. While most 3D titles would have movement based on the camera, so movement towards the camera is down. Here in Resident Evil and most any survival horror title of this style, movement is based upon the character's position. Their right might be the screen's left, but if you want to turn right, you hold right. I understand how some, especially those not accustomed to these games, can find it rather difficult. That said, after just a bit of adapting and years of experience, I find it rather controllable and it doesn't feel clunky to me. Just a small side note about one of the pretty small barriers of entry that some people get filtered by. Now I'm going to start moving through the game's plot. If somehow you still aren't aware of the mysteries found inside the mansion, I suggest you skip to the timestamp on screen. Well, it's not some crazy story that'll blow your socks off or redefine everything. It's a very cozy tale that fits in the horror craze of the 90s.
No! Don't go!
So at the start, when you made your pick, you were ultimately deciding what type of opening you would receive. Jill would arrive in the main hall alongside team member Barry Burton and team leader Albert Wesker. You know, the cool guy who wears shades. Indoors, at night. But what's more is someone is missing.
But Chris is...
What is it?
Maybe it's Chris.
Our duo leaves Wesker to investigate the noise, but instead of finding Chris, Jill comes face to face with an iconic scene. Now, it's something that I never really appreciated until nowadays. Resident Evil has a ton of optional and alternative outcomes. The first one I discovered by accident as a kid, but I never had to click what I was witnessing. You can stand and fight the zombie, resulting in a loss of resources, or you can run back to Barry, and he will handle things.
Barry?
What is it?
Watch out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of this.
Look at Barry, what a Chad. Additionally, you can just stand around, and it will get bored and come attack you. Also, the man being munched on is Bravo team member Kennedy J. Sullivan. You can pinch some spare bullets off him, not like he'll be needing them or anything. Returning to the main hall, Wesker is missing, and this is where the game officially starts. It does a decent job of directing the player too. Barry insists Jill search the east wing while he takes the west. Along with this, he gives you one of Jill's most valuable items.
We could get into trouble if we get lost. We should start from the first floor, okay? And Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
With this, you can progress into the first floor west, nabbing a map floor as well as dealing with some very angry ruffians. If you keep progressing along this and searching room by room, you'll eventually happen upon the shotgun. And if you're a dumb kid who doesn't question why something mechanical started moving when a weight is removed, you might run out into the mortar and pestle room. The door is locked, but luckily grand old Barry's there to be a fucking goddamn Superman.
If I go crazy, then will you still call me Superman?
You ever have a hot sandwich because Jill's about to open her sandwich for Barry's hand cannon? Alright, getting back on track, the entire east wing will pretty much be explored by Jill. You'll find the item chest as well as the initial puzzle of the mansion. Yeah, they do a pretty good job of keeping the player in something of a controlled tutorial with the mansion. While there will be later areas, you're locked off until you manage to navigate the relatively easy enemies and gameplay loops. You don't escape this segment until you manage to find 4 emblems that solve and unlock the door leading to other areas. I say solve, but while it does give you a pretty simple quote, it doesn't actually have you solve anything. Eventually, you'll take the second floor, searching rooms that you can, and eventually you might try that room in the main hall a bit off to the right. Out on the balcony, you'll find 4 spare. Also, don't bother with the crows. Too difficult for all the bullets you'd waste. At least you can get a cool grenade launcher. Returning to the main hall, we're going to take a pause. Some of you may remember a scene with Barry here. That's because he has a multitude of optional scenes. However, the activation of one disables the other. Namely, here you can either be rescued getting the shotgun, or stumble out here for a bit of a chit-chat and get the grenade launcher all the same. Not much of a difference, but still cool. Especially since I never got this cutscene.
Hey, Jill. This must have been Forrest's. You don't have a weapon. Take this with you.
But it's here I'd like to rewind everything and make a different choice. What would we be experiencing through the eyes of Chris? Surprisingly, a similar yet rather different version of events. Arriving in the main hall with Jill and Wesker, we have only our knife to keep us safe. The sound of gunshots that are clearly not his magnum draw us away. One zombie melee or running away like a scared bitch, and everyone is gone. Chris is literally Scooby-Doo at the beginning of Night of 100 Frights. At least we can nab a pistol. Chris can nab the first floor map, but going any further is impossible for now. The lockpicks Jill can use eliminate the need for the sword key. Yeah, while the emblems are the major puzzle pieces to find, the keys are needed to navigate and discover all of the mansion. So instead of heading to the east wing, Chris will instead be taking the west, namely going through the second floor. I always had a soft spot for this room. Not only did I like discovering I could push the statue down to retrieve the blue gem, but I also felt smart leaving one enemy alive since he's so easy to bypass. Eventually you'll find yourself in the western save room, along with someone else.
Whoa! What is it?
What? Oh! Oh no! Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
You must be from the Bravo team.
Yes, I'm Rebecca. Rebecca Chambers. I'm a newcomer. I just joined the S.T.A.R.S Bravo team last month.
Rebecca is the sole member of Bravo team that you've been able to find alive. She will serve as the companion for Chris, though not in the same sense as later Resident Evil titles, or even to the extent of the next generation titles. Upon trying to leave, you'll be prompted with a question. Should she accompany you, or stay in the room? leaving her in the room and tells you to 3 or so full heals. On the surface, it seems nice, but we'll discover it's objectively the worst of the two. Exploring around, you can find a busted shotgun, which is an alternative way for Jill, and the only way for Chris, to recover the working shotgun. Eventually, both characters will have cleared enough that they can come to this lounge room of sorts. For Jill, it's a very simple process of finding the music notes and playing them out. Just make sure you have the wooden emblem from the dining room. Chris, on the other hand, has more of a headache. If you told Rebecca to stay put, then congratulations, you have to read sheet music. If you brought her along, then she tries her best, but...
Wait, what is that?
My interpretation is off a little.
So this just requires you to explore a little bit, run back to the dining room and return. Eventually, she will have gotten it solved and play out the Moonlight Sonata. With the gold emblem, you can now acquire the shield key. Both characters should by now have a few keys on their belt. You can actually snag the armor key from the greenhouse and spy that secret room. By now you should start to have a lot less rooms to explore, one in particular requiring the shield key. Heading there will lead you to another S.T.A.R.S member, Richard Aiken. I do want to say that while the voice acting in the game isn't great, some moments aren't half bad. However, this is the one people use as a bad example.
Richard! What happened?
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
You're wounded! What kind of demon attacked you?
You're now given the chance to run to the Western save room and recover serum that can keep Richard alive just a bit longer. You can now proceed to grab the last emblem. Just one problem. A zombie isn't what killed Richard. Something cool is that this fight is avoidable, as you can grab everything and run. That said, if you do decide to fight, it's not really difficult. Just a handful of acid rounds or about 8 shotgun blasts will take down Yawn. Just be careful not to become trapped and maintain distance if you're low on health. Yawn has the ability to insta-kill you. With that fight over, you will likely get another serum run with Rebecca. Outside of maybe transporting some green herbs or shooting one zombie, she doesn't do much apart from run A to B. By now you have all the emblems, and it's time to leave the most interesting segment of the game. Don't get me wrong, the guardhouse and the other areas are fine, interesting enemies and puzzles to solve. That said, the mansion had a sense of exploring and discovering with hidden secrets. Whereas all later zones are much more linear in progression, a few straight hallways with occasional side rooms. The portion between the guardhouse and mansion is largely just a square. Also be sure to grab those herbs outside the room you used the emblem to unlock. The game has a tendency to remove items like herbs, either to save on storage or simply keep the player from having too much of a build-up. The guardhouse isn't all bad. I like the inclusion of threats that can be avoided, such as the vines, shooting out of holes to grab the player. Just push some statues on top and they're gone. Reminds me of segments like the loft from Alone in the Dark. You may also encounter spiders, but since you never have to go into that room, they are not much of a threat. What you can do is go downstairs to find the basement flooded, and what's worse? Yeah, so there's sharks, but much like the spiders, not a huge threat. I didn't even think to fight them, so I just ran room to room and accidentally ended up draining the whole floor, killing them off. Also, you might have noticed the giant roots. This brings us to the second boss of the game, Plant 42. It is so much easier than Yawn. Its attacks are very weak, and if you stay in the corner of the room, the only attack that can hit you is debris falling from the ceiling. This does minimal damage, and just a few pistol magazines will do the plant in. It does have a fake-out second form, but it doesn't change. Alternatively, as Chris or Jill, you'll be grabbed. For Jill, Barry brings in a flamethrower that comes off almost as hot as the red jacket. For Chris, you'll get Rebecca, who will then have to mix chemicals to construct V-Jolt, then run it down to the roots, finally killing the beast. Jill can also take this route on her own prior to the fight. Either way, it's a real easy boss, and with the helmet key in tow, you know exactly where to go. But not before having a chance encounter with Wesker, who hints where to go. Also making it back, you discover why shotgun shells should be stockpiled. Hunters are easily, in my opinion, the best addition to the game. Fast as dogs and capable of swarming like zombies. The jumping lizards are hardy, and taking one on with a pistol is basically suicide. I actually like how combat with them feels different from everything else. Zombies can be downed easily enough with the handgun, and dogs will get thrown back. But the hunters largely shrug off the rounds. Only the shotgun is capable of knocking them down. With zombies, if I expended resources, I would commit to killing them. With hunters, I more than once weighed the choice before committing a hit and run. Also, they have these insta-kills, which is a constant fear. And if you didn't bring Rebecca with you, the timer has started and you must quickly reach her through a repopulated mansion. If you're too late, she'll be killed. So yes, I think bringing her along is a superior idea. Also, Wesker must be a pretty chill boss. He left supplies outside the East Wing supply room, as jealous will be from Barry, the hype master of pun-bringing. From here to the end of the game, it's pretty simple, but there is one wrinkle for the best ending. So fighting Jan for the last time, you go down a hole. Barry, the lovable oaf, will drop the rope.
Hey, what's going on?
Now I've done it. Sorry, Jill. Wait. I'll go and get another rope.
If you're like me and impatient, you may try the grave for a button. Hold off on it for just a few seconds and Barry returns with another rope. This gets you a passcode and starts Jill down the path to the best ending. The choices for best or good are kind of weird, but it's whatever. You can simply hop down after Barry leaves to search around. And if you're on DualShock, you get this awesome music. Eventually, you'll find yourself reaching the tunnels, and after giving a yes-no combo to Barry, again, trying for the best ending, you'll find Enrico, the leader of Bravo Team.
Is that Jill?
Is that voice Enrico's?
Yeah?
You're alive!
Wait there! Are you with anybody, Jill?
What? Oh, yes!
Enrico!
So, Barry and Jill together.
Are you all right, Enrico?
The stars are doomed. Someone is a traitor. Everything was plotted from the start by Umbrella. Ha!
No matter what, you learn about a traitor, but not before an unseen shooter eliminates the last member of Bravo Team, apart from Rebecca. I always found it kind of funny how Barry and Rebecca are just completely removed from the other's playthrough. Also, thought there was a secret path to find both of them in one playthrough. Now comes the end game of the laboratory. It's once again nothing super difficult. They do have these infinite spawning zombies as well as the introduction of chimeras. The Keeper's Diary makes mention of the chimeras, though as a kid I always figured it was meaning the hunters. They're fast, but not exactly as deadly as the hunters. The hanging attack they did always managed to get me though. Now before I reach the end, I do want to cover the MO disc. Pretty much from the halfway point onwards, the player has multiple opportunities to recover MO discs. Most are just about discovering them, but one requires a puzzle down here in the lab that was a bit tedious and annoying, especially when I thought I had a box covering an event, but in fact did not. You also can't just climb through when the gas starts. With all three, you'll now need to run around to 3 stations and use them. This will ultimately be involved in saving your missing compatriot. Speaking of compatriots, that guy next to all those Umbrella scientists looks rather familiar. Also, Ada. Wonder who that could be. Okay, now this whole end bit can play out in various ways. 2 for each protagonist. Jill's good or bad ending if you abandon Barry has Wesker shooting him. Meanwhile, the good or best ending has Barry returning after hearing Wesker expose the truth about his family.
Barry, go up on the ground and wait there.
Barry!
Barry's such a fool. He'll be under the control of Umbrella forever.
How come both Umbrella and you can intimidate him by taking his family as hostages?
Umbrella? Well, I intimidated him, but it had nothing to do with Umbrella. I just used him for my personal purposes, though both you and Barry seem to think I was following orders from Umbrella.
For Chris, you're either alone because Rebecca died, or she shows up to...
You killed them with your own hands. Did you kill Enrico?
Really?
Yeah. Like this.
Yeah, that. Either way, in 3 of the 4 outcomes, you end up inside the Tyrant Room with Wesker. And Chris gives the best reaction.
Is this?
That's right. This is the ultimate life form. Tyrant! Chris? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
Oh my god. I am never gonna financially recover from this.
Also, while Wesker has gone effectively rogue from Umbrella at this point, he still suffers the fate of so many Umbrella employees, in that a BOW kills him. I had saved my Magnum round, so this fight was ridiculously easy. Not that this boss fight is particularly tough, I actually consider Jan to be the hardest. For Jill, if Wesker was left down the hallway, he's fled and triggered the self-destruct. For Chris...
Wow!
Ha! It seems like this bulletproof jacket is pretty strong. Excuse me, Chris.
What, Rebecca?
I saw a research file in this lab. It said that a great deal of research on the Tyrant virus exists right here. We should blow this place up.
We are already into it over our heads. Rebecca, can you do it?
Yes, sir. I'll set off a triggering system for a bomb.
Okay. Now we have a chance to escape.
Yeah, Rebecca's damn cute. I don't know where in medic training she learned the arm explosive, but fuck it, go nuts. Heading topside, you let off the flares, fight Tyrant one last time, and after a few moments, the coward pilot from the opening returns. He's back to get us out, and then the original mic drop happens. The rocket launcher, an M202 flash. All you need is one clean shot. Flying off with whoever we save, the credits roll and we get a nice little song. Now, I didn't cover every possible decision and outcome. Frankly, that could be its own video, and I may make that one day. But suffice to say, there are plenty, and possibly even more than what was found in Nemesis. Though that one was a bit more direct and upfront, I felt with it making it very clear when a decision was happening. So Resident Evil has seen many ports and iterations. Again, it could be its own video. But just doing a quick overview segment, there are some differences I would like to bring up. There's the various console ports from Japanese original to the American DualShock edition. What of note is the original PC release, which came with a fully uncensored intro, as well as being in color. Due to localization problems, the West would largely not see this for some time. Even the port on PS4 has a censored intro. Guys, just give us a gallery mode with both. Additionally, the PC port would allow the unlocking of Bravo team weapons. Jill would get an Ingram, while Chris gets the Minimi machine gun. It's interesting to me that these weapons never got added in any future ports. A personal favorite port of mine is the DS entry, Resident Evil Deadly Silence. It has a ton of quality of life additions, such as the map and items being on the bottom screen. It also came with the ability to execute a quick turn. The grave in the second Yawn boss fight has gone from a simple button to 5-finger fillet. The knife would also be used in special fights. You could deliver fast slashes as well as powerful stabs. Just a really cool way to play RE1, and should the original be ported again or included in some master collection, I would really like this to be included, with adjustments made for other systems and the inclusion of the PC weapons. Also, the Sega Saturn had a gold Tyrant. So for the first official title of survival horror, it's one hell of an outing, a carefully crafted piece of art that largely still holds up. This is in part to how much control the developers had with everything. The fixed cameras giving the players a frame perspective that the creators could utilize perfectly. The sound also carries much of the game's tone. While the eerie lighting and chosen angles put fear into the player's eyes, it's a sound that fills you with dread. The music captures so much for every scene, every room of the map, save for that one. Additionally, the sound of a zombie groan or a dog's clicking aid the player where the camera lets them down. The puzzles, both big and small, are fun and surprisingly logical, as opposed to some of the kookier ones later entries would explore. Bosses are probably the lowest point of the title, but with how quick they can be over, it's a rather small note. If you haven't played Resident Evil 1, there are plenty of available variations. I'd say the remake is different enough to be considered separate from the various ports, all of which have ensured this game refuses to stay down, much like the evil residents of the Spencer Mansion. Even at their lowest points, the core game is enjoyable and fun. The franchise would go through many variations and experiments, from experimental FPS titles to experimental online titles. It would have highs in its mutations and lows, but no matter what, this game was the entry point for many, and with it still getting ported to modern systems through sites like GOG, it will continue to be played. We had to ramp up to this title, but it's here we can truly say we've reached the world of survival horror.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.